Okay, so in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Chase.
Here.
Mr. LaCourte.
Here.
Ms. MacIver asked to be excused. Mr. Mettler.
Here.
Mr. Pettit.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Potosnak.
Here.
Mr. Onyaka. Chairman Orsini.
Here. Okay, so we'll start with the minutes for the regular meeting of December 18th, 2013. Are there any comments, corrections, or changes on those?
If there are none, I move the minutes.
Second.
Councilman Chase. Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Pettit.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Potosnak.
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
Excuse me, on the minutes, you went too fast for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Minutes of December 4th, on page 3, the second paragraph begins, Mr. Linus explained by way of background that the township adopted a billboard ordinance permitting digital billboards as a conditional use in the M2 zone. I would think that should read not permitting digital billboards.
That is true. We'll make that correction.
And he goes on to discuss the legal case, so he's clearly the situation before the legal case. On page 4, the fourth full paragraph, next to last line, says detailed the distance to the nearest residential property at a distance of 335 feet. Is that to the nearest residential property or to the cemetery that's directly across?
That's to the nearest residential property line.
Okay. I wanted to check that.
Well, we'll make that change.
The minutes of January 8th,
Well, we haven't done those yet, so why don't you
We
hold your
just do-
comments until we do that?
with that change, I'll vote yes for the December 4th
Okay.
minute.
Okay, so now we have the regular meeting minutes from January the 8th. And now, Ted, go ahead, before we move on that.
On page 6, the third paragraph, big paragraph about in the middle, I was just wondering, it says, however, there was one that was as far over as 12 and a half feet. Is that 12 and a half or 2 and a half? The balcony.
It should be, I think,
12, I think the closest is 12 and a half feet. We'll check that. Either way, we checked, we made sure the dimensions were correct in the resolution, so we'll go back and make sure that the minutes are correct.
You know, I didn't think it was that far over because it was only the balconies that made the buildings non-conforming. At 12 and a half feet, the whole building would have been non-conforming.
My recollection is
There was one
that
up in the corner, there was one in the corner, if I remember the plan right, because the street came like this. I think that one was pretty,
Yeah, my recollection is that it protruded into the setback 8 and a half feet, which meant that the resulting setback would have been 12 and a half. Because it was a 20-foot
20-foot
setback.
setback, right?
Yep.
Okay,
There was one like that one.
yeah. Yeah, well, I think the wording back, there was one that was as far over as, that would be, the wording would indicate that it was whatever distance over
Yeah.
the proper setback. So it would be not the remaining setback, but the overage.
Yes, yes. And again, the resolution, which is also up for your adoption tonight, that one, we made sure those dimensions were all correct.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and make sure that the minutes are consistent with
Maybe
the
you just want
resolution.
to change the wording?
mean, the dimensions are the
Change
dimensions.
the wording just to make
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
clear.
Well, it's just a question of whether or not you remove a one.
Okay.
And just a sort of grammatical thing, on page 7, third paragraph, last line, which reads, "From the townhouses from Route 27," and I think it would be block the views from the townhouses of Route 27.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Ted.
Okay.
With that, I can have a motion on these?
So, move to approve.
Second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik,
yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. Okay, so now we move to the resolutions. First one will be E&J Equities, PLN 13-00002. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
This one I'm going to abstain on because I could not vote on this.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik,
No.
Chairman Orsini.
Well, let's see. Are you sure I can vote on this one? As I'm looking at the,
I'm going by how Christine did it. Did you not vote? Did you not?
I don't know, because this is E&J, right? So I have vote on motion 4 was Chase, McIver, Mettler, Pettit, Stevens, and Thomas. Against, Postenak, abstained.
Well, then you can't vote then.
No.
That's,
So the people that did vote in, that voted
Yes.
against and that abstained, we're all right. All right. So that carries. Okay, Rosenwalk Tank, PLN 13-00014.
Move to approve the resolution?
Second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik,
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. Okay, Trap Rock, PLN 13-00015. There's a couple of changes to this that were pointed out to me by our attorney. So, on the first page, where it says Trap Rock Industries Incorporated, that should be changed to Trap Rock Industries LLC. On page... there eventually. 4, same thing in the first paragraph under now therefore it be resolved, it should be Trap Rock LLC. And in paragraph number 3, the board is satisfied, third sentence, that the height drain test, it should be crane test. Be an interesting test if it was. And I think that's it. So those are the corrections for that resolution. With that,
Mr. Chairman, I would move the resolution with the changes.
I'll second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik.
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka has arrived, so you can vote on this matter.
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
And our last resolution is Redev Group LLC, PLN 13-00013. No changes that I know of on this one.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the resolution.
I'll second that.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik,
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka,
Yes.
and Chairman Orsini.
Yes. All right, so under the discussion items, approval of the vouchers for the board attorney, Martin Murphy, you see some detail there, what they're for, and we can approve those by acclamation. And we can do that all at once.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah.
could request, we did receive, we're working on the bills, is that right? We received a new invoice from Mr. Murphy's office for the March retainer in the amount of $833. So if I could request that that be included as well?
Okay. So we're going to amend the vouchers to standard 833, so just multiply that by 3 instead of 2, and whatever that comes up with. For January, February, and March is the amount for that. Otherwise, we have the 2 other items that are detailed there. So for the vouchers, may I have a motion?
Move the vouchers.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we'll start the hearings. First one, 800 Cottontail LLC, PLN 13-00017. And this was carried from February the 5th, 2014, with no further notification required. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Langford.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is an application for site plan approval for the addition to an existing data center located at 800 Cottontail Lane at the intersection of Cottontail and Pierce. There currently exists on the subject property a 168,000 square foot building, and we are proposing a 2-story addition of approximately 160,000 square feet. In 2009, I appeared with the applicant before this board. At that time, we came in for site plan approval to convert what was then a vacant warehouse into a data center. And that dealt with the original building. At that time, we also received approval to construct certain chiller plants and utility yard. When we were there in 2009, we indicated we would be back in a few years for the second phase, and here we are. As I indicated, this is a variance-free application. The only thing that I do need to put on the record, because of footnote 4 of your ordinance with the parking requirements, is basically the parking needs, because data centers, the board can waive all of the parking requirements because they are not necessary. We testified in 2009 as part of the record that there would be a total of 40 employees on site over 3 shifts. In speaking to my client with the doubling of the space, he indicated that the worst-case scenario would be the doubling of employees, and then my engineer will testify as to the adequacy of the parking spaces. Having said that, I do have here this evening the engineer and the architect to present the testimony. I will call as my first witness, Mr. Fick.
I want to raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth. Thank you. License in the state of New Jersey, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, by whom are you employed, Mr. Fick?
Carroll Engineering in Hillsborough.
Okay, and was your firm involved in the original application in 2009?
Yes.
Okay. I have taken liberty, Mr. Chairman, to mark 3 exhibits. I marked them A1, 2, and 3, A1 being the existing conditions plan, A2 being the new site plan, and A3 are the architecturals for the building. Mr. Fick, very briefly, can you give the board an overview of what's currently located on the subject property?
Sure. The subject property is located on the corner of Cottontail and Pierce Street. This white building here, this is the existing data center. Parking along Pierce Street, parking along Cottontail. The detention basin is between this parking lot and Cottontail Drive that runs along the northern side of the property, northern side of the building, past the existing substation, which was constructed, part of the application in 2009, and a driveway along the easterly property line. There are 3 access drives on the property, 2 on Pierce Street and 1 on Cottontail Lane.
In 2009, when we came in for approval, we had to modify the detention basin. Is that not correct?
That is correct. We modified the detention basin to take into account the improvements at that time. In addition to that, we also made the improvements for a future addition. At that time, it actually was a larger addition than what we are proposing now.
So the detention basin that's currently in place was designed and will handle the stormwater runoff from this addition, correct?
That is correct.
Going to Exhibit A2, can you briefly indicate to the board what we are proposing to do on the subject property?
Sure. In the back of the existing building, currently there's a staging area that has been there since 2009, since the initial application. This is the location of the proposed building. There will be some improvements related to that building. If I can move over to this side, this is the proposed building. We're going to make some minor modifications to the driveway along the easterly property line. The building will have 2 loading dock areas. We'll have some sidewalks, parking spaces, and a modification to this driveway onto Pierce Street. We'll be making that a one-way exit. Right, currently it's both directions, but we're going to make that a egress only, left and right. Also improvements, significant landscaping to soften the building all around the 3 sides of the addition, grass, shade trees, shrubs. We will be using the same existing lighting that's on the site, same fixture style, LED lights. We'll be trying to use the current lighting that's there and transfer those to new locations. And then also some minor utility modifications as well.
Can you indicated that there are 3 driveways currently servicing the site, and we're modifying one of the driveways. Can you indicate to the board how circulation works on this site?
Sure. If I can go back to Exhibit A1, the entrance, current entrance off of Cottontail will be a delivery truck entrance only, and there'll be a gate here, so it'll be regulated. So trucks will be able to come through, make a delivery to this loading dock here, or traverse the northerly driveway up and around back to the loading docks here, and then exit through this driveway along the eastern property line, and then out through the new egress on Pierce Street. And then also the other driveway here in this corner, it will be for visitors only, visitors and employees only. At this entrance, it'll also be regulated by a gate, intercom reader type of system.
So the entire site then will be controlled at all the driveways by gates?
Yeah, that is correct. They will have a K4 type of barrier gate, and will be regulated by some kind of a mechanism for access through a reader or an intercom system.
Now, with the addition, there will be then 2 loading areas at the subject property.
Peter, sorry, before we leave the driveways, just let me get this straight. So the one driveway that you just mentioned that exists, that one, yeah, is that full movement in and out?
Yes.
Okay.
It is
And
currently.
then the one further down that you talked about, that's only out,
Currently, it's both ways, both directions, but it will
It'll
become a
only wanna
one-way
make it-
only.
out, okay. And then the one off of Cottontail that's only for deliveries, that's full movement as well?
Yes, both directions.
But it's really only going to be for,
Well, what's happening currently on site is that FedEx trucks, like big box kind of trucks, go through here and make deliveries at this loading dock here. So they park here, unload their boxes and letters and things, because there's a doorway in this area. Then they'll back out and just come out this way. For the larger trucks that'll have to go to these loading docks, they'll just drive through, pull up here, back in, and then just negotiate out the new driveway and out.
so likewise, it would be possible for a visitor employee to come in there as well and do the
And
same.
this
No, in the on Cottontail.
It's possible.
They just go around the back and they'd have access to the rest of the site?
That is possible,
You're right.
sure, but they would obviously check in and tell them they're either come in or, you're going the wrong way or whatever, they'll be directed to the current location, but it is possible for them to make that journey to this side if necessary.
Before we leave the movement, I'm basing it off of your comment there, and I don't know if Carl made any other ones that ever encountered that. I don't see a real huge problem, but I just wanted to.
No, I don't either, and when I reviewed it, I didn't have the benefit of the testimony. Carl's comment basically said that if it's going to be one way out, that it has to be signed and have the appropriate pavement markings.
Yes.
Which I assume they're going to do.
Yeah, we will have pavement markings, yes.
So I think that would address the issue.
All right, good. Go ahead, Pete.
With respect to vehicles and parking, just for the record, so we can justify the parking that we are proposing, can you indicate how many parking spaces are being proposed for vehicles, not for truck parking?
Vehicles, 217 spaces.
Okay, so we have more than enough to meet our needs, is that correct?
That is correct, well more than we need. Mhm.
Okay. With respect to the staff reports that were generated in conjunction with this application, you've had an opportunity to review all of those reports,
Yes.
and we can comply with all of the requests of the staff, other than the one comment that Mr. Healy had concerning the driveway, which we just discussed, but in all other respects, we can comply with all of the staff reports.
That is correct, yes.
And by complying with all of the staff reports, will they materially alter the plans that are being reviewed by the board this evening?
No.
Thank you, I have no further questions.
Fantastic. Board have any questions for the engineer? No? Okay.
You have another witness?
I have the architect to,
Okay. I mean, is somebody going to speak to, or maybe you have and I didn't hear it, the number of employees?
I did.
Okay, what was that number?
The current number is 40 employees over 3 shifts, and the worst-case scenario with the addition is that will double to 80 employees over 3 shifts.
80 employees over 3 shifts?
Yes,
And there's 217 spaces existing right now?
yes.
So that's your...
No, there will be 217 spaces as a result of the
Gotcha.
site plan.
Gotcha. Because there was a warehouse, and then you've converted, and these are
Correct.
basically the spaces that are left.
Yeah.
That is correct.
That is
And
correct.
I assume it's your position that that number is more than enough to meet the needs of the site?
I
As a
believe
center.
so.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not too good at math, but I believe so.
I have a question just about curiosity. So data center, hard drives, data storage,
Yes.
it just seems funny with so little employees to have a left and a right. So just
Well,
if there's not that many people coming in and out.
Well, that is true, and we're trying to regulate as much access onto the site as possible, but this modification here was primarily for these loading docks and the turn, because we had to move that driveway to the east a little bit because of this turn here. These trucks would not be able to negotiate that, so we modified this and made this a one-way out, really for the benefit of the loading docks, and that's really going to be the main purpose for that. Is just for exiting after deliveries are made. It just worked out that way, and given the size of the trucks and the turning radius, the trucks turning in there, we don't want cars coming in at the same time, so there's enough access onto site now, so it was our belief that it would be best to just make that a one-way direction.
But just having it be, one way, but you could just, there's not like a line of cars in the left lane to make a left and then a line
No,
in the
no,
right lane. So you
no.
could just have one lane. Just curious why you chose to have a left and then a right, which seems like a lot of traffic.
I think maybe the arrows maybe are a little misleading, but it's really one way out, and then you can make a decision whichever way you want to go, left or right. It's just that the width of that drive, that's the current width of the drive, and we just need that width for the trucks to be able to negotiate through the curb. So we just need that 30-foot width there, but basically the trucks can make the choice left or right, whatever they want at that point. So.
Okay. Any other questions for this witness?
Where are these loading docks you're talking about? Just show it on the drawing.
I'm sorry?
Loading
The
docks.
Loading docks, where they are?
The new ones, Jim?
Sure, right here.
Okay, all right, I wasn't sure what I'm looking at.
Be the northeast corner.
And you have sufficient turning movement radius for that?
Yes. Yes, we ran their templates through.
125 feet or something.
We used the WB57 truck, which is the largest template that we have. We ran it through the entire site and is able to negotiate all the turns.
But when it's parked in the loading dock, it doesn't obstruct anything?
It
When
does
the
not.
trailer's in the dock?
No, it does not. Once it's still parked, we still have a 30-foot width
We
available.
ever noticed requirements where, exactly, it was 110 or 125 feet straight out back.
Yeah,
You have that.
I'll show you the motion. When the truck comes in here, it pulls up here, and then it backs in. It backs,
Okay, so on that skewed.
yeah, excuse, exactly.
One dock?
It's 2 docks.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it backs in, and then it
Behind
continues
that's what I
forward.
was-
Yeah, yeah, we weren't able to negotiate that 90-degree kind
Put
of
it
turn.
dock, but-
Yeah.
Still a little old, eyes are going.
I have one other question, and so it's a data center, is a bunch of computers.
Yeah, it's large hard drives. They're just,
Why 3 loading docks and all these FedEx packages and mail? It just seems like a lot of infrastructure for hard drives.
well, this space is going to be, I guess it's going to depend on the occupant. There's going to be some office space in there, and there is some office space in the front of the building here. It's not a frequent use, not a frequent trip by trucks. The applicant has informed me that maybe 1 or 2 trips a day, maybe, for the rear loading docks. It also depends on who the tenant's going to be at that time. We're not sure, but.
So some of this may be rented out,
Um,
other use, or?
It's not under, I don't know if it's another use or not. I can't
No,
answer
it's
that, I'm
not.
not sure, but
The way it works is that companies rent space within the building to store their servers. So there are numerous tenants within that building at the present time. With the addition, companies will rent space from 800 Cottontail LLC to store their servers. Their servers will be delivered through those loading docks, and as my client says, equipment always comes in and nothing ever leaves. Once it's there, it's always there. But those loading docks are to deliver the servers that will fill up the 2-story, 160-foot addition. In that addition area also, there is some office space, some mechanical. Most of the deliveries are just servers, and then there's other trucks that come in if they have to repair any of the equipment or maintenance.
Okay.
All right, so if there are no other questions for this witness, I guess, if you need...
That's it, right?
Do you need to call your architect, or...
The architect is here. If the board has any the building is going to match what's exactly there. You see it on the rendering. If
I
you
don't
want,
feel we need to, if you don't feel that...
if the board doesn't want to hear the testimony of the
I don't.
architect.
No, it's
Like
gonna look,
like
it's
I
gonna look the
said,
same.
unless it's going to look like Xanadu, I don't...
It's gonna look the same, yeah.
The building will look like A3, which is, it'll match the existing building. So if the board doesn't want to hear the testimony, I have no problem with
And
that.
it'll actually be occupied.
Orange stripe and green stripe.
Very true.
In that case, I have no further witnesses.
All right. So I think we can open it for the public. If you want to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the meeting be opened to the public for a hearing on this application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is now open to the public for comment on this application. Is there anybody?
Mr. Chairman, seeing no one coming forward, I would move that this public hearing be closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nothing further, I would just respectfully request approval of the site plan.
I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the site plan.
Second.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Pettit.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Potasnik.
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka.
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Okay, well, we have a little bit of a minute here for turnover. The next application will be Builders Pro LLC, PLN 14-00002.
I understand you have some concern about if I understand this concern correctly, one thing you might want to do.
You use the mic, speak into the mic so it gets on.
Is it on?
It is.
Okay. My name is Dominic Sermonero. I represent Builders Pro, the applicant. Seated to my left is Gregory Ginsberg, who is one of the principals of Builders Pro. We're here for what is characterized as a major subdivision, although the only reason is because of a prior subdivision. It's truly more in character as a minor subdivision of a two-lot subdivision. We're proposing to subdivide Block 168, Lot 34.01 in the HBD Zone 123 Douglas Avenue into two lots. They would be two variances required. One would be that they would be a width of 50 foot instead of the required 100 feet, and they would be of 5,000 total area versus 10,000. It would be my intention to call Mr. Ginsberg first to advise the board as to what the nature of the development would be on those lots. I would also advise the board that there was a attempt, and all four abutting owners were notified in an attempt to either acquire property or to sell property to eliminate the necessity of these variances. There was no response, and the mailings have been turned in to the board. So I would call Mr. Ginsberg first.
I want to raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
What is your name and address, sir?
Gregory Ginsberg, 36 Clydefields Road, Edison, New Jersey, 08820.
Mr. Ginsberg, you can be seated, sir. All right. You are one of the principals of Builders Pro, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
All right. And what does Builders Pro do?
We're building a few houses so far, mostly in North Brunswick Township. And it's, like I said, it's single-family houses, tended to be more in the range of between $300,000 and $400,000 of a sales price. Usually it's two-story building with 3 or 4 bedrooms, 1 or 2 car garages with full basement.
And is that what you are proposing for these two lots?
For these two lots, I'm proposing our model, which is very well known right now in North Brunswick. It's 2-story, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, 1 car garage, full basement. Square footage, a little bit over 2,000.
This point, we have no other questions for Mr. Ginsberg. If the board has questions for Mr. Ginsberg as to that site and what would be proposed.
I may have misunderstood. Did you say 4 bedrooms? Because looking at the plan, I only see 3. But
on the plan, you might see 3 with an option of 4. Because the architectural plan, which we did for that model, can show 3-bedroom or 4 bedrooms.
okay, I do see a bathroom on the top floor, so I suppose that would suggest that it would be a bedroom up there. Yeah. Well,
I have a question. When you architect looking into portable attic, basically house, the attic is not occupied, right?
Right, it's not
Nothing in the attic?
No, none.
There's no extra bedrooms?
No, even not usually it's only one key with in basement.
Okay, fine, basically. So it's a 2-story house?
Of course.
Full basement?
Yep.
Unoccupied attic?
As opposed to 2 single
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Ginsberg?
Basement.
If the board has no other questions for this witness, we can continue on.
Thank you. Fletcher? Paul Fletcher, who is a planner and an engineer, licensed both in the state of New Jersey. I would
Okay.
ask that he be accepted, or I can have him put.
Just raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you are licensed in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Mr. Fletcher, you've had an opportunity to review the report of Mr. Healy and also the report of Mr. Thomas, correct?
Yes, I have.
And prior to you giving any further testimony, the applicant will accept the report of Mr. Thomas and the report of Mr. Healy, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. In its entirety?
Yes.
All right. Would you tell us what you have, would you give us your testimony as to this application and as to its impact, both negative, if any, and positive also?
Certainly. The subject property, it's known as Lot 34.01 in Block 168. It's located on the east side of Douglas Avenue, approximately 190 feet south of the intersection with Hamilton Street. It's located in the HBD zone. It's the Hamilton Business District zone. And one of the permitted uses in that zone is a two-family house. We do comply with the minimum lot size for the zone, which is 10,000 square feet. So a permitted use is a two-family home. The applicant, however, would prefer to build two single-family, fee-simple detached homes, and that is the reason he is here to seek a subdivision, a technical major subdivision, to create two 50 by 100-foot lots. He does need variances from the ordinance requirements. Firstly, lot area, where 10,000 is required per lot, and he's proposing 5,000 for each one. Secondly, lot width, where 100 feet is the required lot width in this zone, where 50 foot is proposed for each lot. And lastly, front yard setback. The zone requires a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 10 foot for front yard. We are, and I noted on my plan that that had been previously granted, but that was for the prior application, prior minor subdivision. And in the planner's report from the township, he noted that it would be appropriate to request the variance for these new lots, again, to request a variance for the front yard setback. We're proposing 25 feet, which we feel is more in character and consistent with the neighborhood. It also allows for parking in the front yard in front of the single-car garage.
What is the character of the neighborhood?
Well, it's commercial along Hamilton Street. There's some mixed uses. There's I think it's a VHF, Servicemen's Club across the road. But it's predominantly residential as you get further away from Hamilton Street. So I believe this would fit into that particular neighborhood.
What would be the size of the lots, most of the lots in that area?
Well,
The residential lots?
The residential lots, they vary quite a bit. I actually did a small exhibit of an example of the tax map, or I took a tax map and I color-coded it. And I color-coded the subject property in pink, and I highlighted all the properties, residential properties in the neighborhood that were 50 foot in width or less. And you can see there's a considerable number in the neighborhood. The 50-foot lots that we're proposing would certainly not be out of character with the existing pattern of development.
We're going to just mark this as Exhibit A1.
Yes.
Okay.
With regards to the engineering report, the applicant will be fully compliant with all requests. Any additional details, any change in stormwater requirements will all be done to the satisfaction of the engineering department.
Would any of those additions, as a result of the engineer's report, materially alter the plans that have been submitted?
No, there will be some modification to the drainage system to ensure that we're compliant with the stormwater regulations in Franklin Township. But the placement of the home, driveway, the access, that would all remain the same.
Is it also true that a single-family home would tend to be more owner-occupied than a two-family, which would tend to be a rental? Is that right?
That's right, and that goes to one of the positive criteria for this application, which I believe can be granted under the C2 criteria, where the benefits outweigh the detriments. Where we're permitted to put a two-family home up, that generally is a rental situation, either one or both units. However, by subdividing and building two individual homes, that encourages individual home ownership, the pride of home ownership, allowing a positive impact to the neighborhood. So I believe it promotes the general welfare in that sense.
That was also Mr. Healy's feeling also.
That is, I read the planner's report, and I certainly have no area of disagreement with his conclusions, and I think it's frankly fairly positive report towards the hopeful approval of this application.
I have nothing further.
Okay. Any questions for this witness?
Do all the board members have the plans that show the lot and also that show the house that's proposed? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that because it is, it's part of their proposal, and it does give you a sense of, if these are two 5,000 square foot lots, which sounds small, and for Franklin, it is on the small side, certainly. But the illustrations show you the house that's proposed, which, in my opinion, are pretty attractive. And if you did, I don't need to repeat my report in its entirety, but it was pretty positive. And the main reason was, at least in my opinion, I think what we really need to concentrate on is what's permitted on this particular site in that zone. And in the HBD zone, off of Hamilton Street, on a side street, the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. And single-family and two-family homes are permitted on that 10,000 square foot area. So as of right now, they could submit for a building permit tomorrow, and it would get approved by zoning and construction to build a duplex. The proposal here is to build the same density, to build two homes, but instead to subdivide the lot into two separate lots, and then upon each lot would be a single-family detached house. And I made the same comment that the engineer and planner just did, which is generally single-family detached homes have more of a likelihood to be home ownership versus rental, and in an area like Hamilton Street, where we're looking to encourage investment, encourage development, and I think certainly encourage home ownership, on balance, I think the benefits certainly outweigh any detriments. So I'll offer that to the board.
Mr. Healy,
Thank you.
can I ask a question?
Yes, by all means.
You mentioned that if they put in for a two-family, that they would just be able to be approved.
Mhm.
But they're also asking for a larger amount of house on the space, right? So we're not only considering splitting it.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they could build, the building coverage and the lot coverage requirements in HBD are pretty liberal. They could build a pretty large duplex on that site, same square footage of each of these houses.
Because the way I'm looking at it, there's a 5-foot setback, 10 feet in the middle. So let's say they push the two houses together with a firewall between them. Same idea, right?
Well, there's
and you're-
zero set, well, with a duplex, Yeah, there's no lot line in between. As you said, they have a firewall, and then they can just basically build out to the side setbacks.
So what would
And
the
with-
setback be in the HPD? I'm not familiar.
I think it's 5 feet and 15.
Yeah, I think what the bottom line is that you're saying that maybe they're building more lot coverage. They could build, probably could actually build more lot coverage with the two-family in theory than they can with the two single,
Because they're only-
the two
yeah.
single families, because
What is the percentage of lot coverage they're allowed?
I think it's like 40% or something
Zoning
like that.
table, is it?
It's, the HPD is very liberal. I think it's like 40%. So in theory, they could actually build a bigger house with more lot coverage total on that 10,000 square feet.
1,000 square
Yeah, and I think,
Right.
and the reason is, that's a good point, Vince, and the reason is, if it's a duplex, they only have to deal with two side lot line requirements. So they can kind of build out to those two, whereas with the duplex, or with the two single-family homes, they have to deal with four altogether. So that's going to restrict the amount of building mass that they can have. They have to, on each of those lots, they're going to have two setbacks.
And you know exactly the house that you're getting here, which I think we would all agree is appropriate for those size lots versus whether this applicant does it or he sells the property. They could build anything that they want, whether we liked it or didn't like it, as long as it met the requirements, which could be considerably greater than what their proposal is here.
I would also like to add, this property is located in basically a redevelopment zone going back to 1998 to 2000. And one of the goals in that redevelopment plan was infill housing in areas like this. These two houses, in my mind, fit that concept perfectly. And in fact, I do agree with the comments of one-family houses versus two-family houses. I think our experience in that area particularly has shown one-family houses are owner-occupied, two-family houses are not. Two-family houses are often simply investors. And I don't think that that is good for the stability of the neighborhood. We see the house we're getting no more density than we would get with a two-family house. And I really feel that they fit the goals of what was started 15 years ago and what we've been trying to follow through to a conclusion of the plan. So I would support this, and I don't think I think if the benefit far outweighs any variances that I've heard anything about.
Any other comments?
I'm fine.
Councilman Chase, I believe, is.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
Well, I just don't like the idea of subdividing down to half the size of the lot required in the zone. I mean, of course, we have to live with a certain number of lots, of smaller lots, and of course, in the R7 zone, which is really most of the picture here, 7,500 is all that's required, although I think it's bigger for 10,000 for a two-family house. And this would be 10,000, so that would be acceptable for a two-family house. But I just don't like the precedent of subdividing and creating lots smaller than called for in the zoning ordinance, even if there is this question of two single-family houses versus a two-family house.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this planning board corrected was for years and years in the R7, you were able to build a two-family house on 10,000 square feet and a single-family on 7,500, and you corrected that to make it 15,000. So I think you're right. It's not the greatest precedent, but in this particular case where it's on Hamilton Street, where we've been trying to encourage this type, and you as a member of the planning board and as a member of the council have, I think, prevented that precedent from going forward in other zones, I think it's safe to say that this is very limited in the scope that we're going to apply, and given the type of housing that's being proposed, I think it's a little bit different than the normal type of application where you'd look at it and say, oh my God, this is going to happen 40 other times. It's not going to, because we've changed the requirements in the other zones.
Yeah, I think the other thing that distinguishes it is that this isn't a situation where somebody's trying to squeeze more. We certainly have seen over the years the applications where the requirement is 10,000 square feet, and, well, we're going to propose 7,500. What's the harm? Well, the harm is that the zone is 10,000 square feet, and you're proposing more than is permitted. I think here, I think the density issue, in my opinion, is pretty key, in that they're not squeezing more. I think they've submitted an exhibit that shows that 5,000 square foot lots are pretty prevalent in the area. And also, this is not really a residential, it's not only a residential zone, it's also a business zone, which differentiates it from setting precedent in other areas of the town.
I don't see this setting a precedent at all. This is one specific property in a very sensitive, particular area of town with different goals than most other areas, different goals for development, particularly when this is in a designated redevelopment area that we've been focusing on.
If I could just throw in my 2 cents, I mean, I actually tend to agree with Ted, and, I think that maybe it's worthwhile revisiting what exactly, in terms of residential development, the standards for Hamilton Street ought to be. Because if you do look at this map provided by the applicant, while there's a lot of yellow and a lot of 50 square foot wide lots that are on there, there's a greater number that aren't yellow. And essentially, the way I look at it in its immediate vicinity, you could say that you could really make arguments for both. The only thing that sort of mitigates that for me in this particular application is, the fact that, we'd previously approved a 2-family dwelling, in which case I totally agree with Mark that having 2 single-family dwellings is preferable. That said, how it is that the zoning is allowed for a duplex to be built,
Well, just as an
really ought
aside.
to maybe be
yeah.
revisited.
As an aside, really quick, the whole Hamilton Business District zoning will be reviewed within the next year. The whole SID area and the Hamilton Business District, the council has recently changed the way that we're taking care of the SID, and one of the directions that the council has given us is to take a look at the zoning. So within the next year, this board and the council will be taking a comprehensive look at the zoning on that street. So your comments are taken to heart and have already been started in the process, so.
Yeah, I mean, and Bob's right in the sense that, it's not a lot of properties, but it is a precedent. And I mean, it's infill today. In maybe 10 years, you might get a parcel where it's not infill anymore. It's something that really changes the character of the neighborhood. So, yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts.
If I could just add, I live on a lot size, this size, 50 feet by 100. And when I look at this square and I think of my property, it's not very big. The backyard, the front yard, you're talking about 5 feet. You can hardly get around. Putting a piano in the side door, if there were one, would be an issue. So 5 feet is not a lot of space. And I would just appeal to the board about the precedent, in that it seems like a lot of house on that lot. And even though these are color-coded, when I look at the satellite map, the character of the neighborhood is these houses that are color-coded yellow as being 50 feet are much smaller. So they have a lot more yard. And when you look to the back of, let's say, 3403, and there's lot 3 and 4, which make a house, when I look at the satellite map, I see a garage structure right on the back line, which puts a structure close to the house. I mean, I'd imagine it's within 5 feet. And I'm not sure if there's a fire, I mean, it passed through fire, but that also seems very congested. But maybe I'm looking at the satellite wrong.
Could I make one
You know,
comment?
One thing, these things were all, this developed after World War II. You could buy lots, 25.
That's what I live on,
lot.
yeah.
And people did that, so when you see a lot of these things where there's a garage, like on the property line, there really wasn't any zoning. So
But that
when you look at
person-
the aerials, they built pretty much what they wanted.
But
In fact,
that
some of them
person's
had
gonna-
well and septic systems.
That person who buys that house is going to be very close to that garage on that property.
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, that
Yeah.
that's how all that comes about. It's not like,
You know, while this is a good,
it kind of evolves.
while this is a good discussion, let's just let the applicant finish up, and then,
Yeah.
you know, we'll open it to public, and then we can have some more board discussion if we need it. But I just don't want to interrupt your time. I mean, I thought this was useful to give you our perspective, but
It was fine. It was.
I think we need to move.
If I may point out to the board, I've just turned to the second sheet. This is the second sheet of our submittal. It's not an exhibit, it's the plans that we've submitted. And I'm just pointing to the house on the grading plan here. The house is 28 feet wide. That's what's proposed. That's what would be built. And the minimum setback is 5 feet in the zone, but the proposed house is actually 11 feet from the property line. I believe you're looking at the subdivision map, which doesn't actually show the house. You see the, Mr. Lepasnik?
Oh, so that's what that square is?
Yeah, that's what's called the building envelope.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
That's,
So
I'm
that's
worried over here, you
That's
guys.
the
Didn't want to
maximum
interrupt you at the time.
location of where
Feel
the
free.
building could be. If you could look to the right on that same page,
This one.
well, no, I'm sorry, you're looking at the final plat, yes, that has the building envelope. If you were to look at the preliminary subdivision plans, which I'm pointing to, you would see that both side yard setbacks for each building are 11 feet.
Okay, on here
So-
it's marked, but that's the envelope. It says side
That's,
yard
that's,
setback.
yeah, that's the allowed envelope, which is a zone requirement. And in fact, I believe that if there were a side door there, that I think a piano, at least an upright one, would go through quite easily.
It says 5.
But yeah, that 5 feet is a minimum.
Got it.
And yes, there are some structures on the adjoining properties that don't conform with the required setback, but they're not on our property, they're off the property. And you can see that on that plan as well.
Thank you.
Do you have any other witnesses?
No, I don't have any other witnesses,
Okay,
but
well, that's
That's the 11.
for the board to maybe have better envision of what this would appear, there is in scale showing the two houses. The only problem is I would have to pass it around, which we can do.
I wasn't ready to show on the big screen, but if you're interested, it's in real scale. The houses versus the lot.
Just do me a favor, use the mic so it'll pick up on the record.
Right. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready to show on the big screen. I didn't think it's going to be needed, but if it's interesting here on the screen and I can...
It's fine, we can just call.
Right. It shows in the right scale, in the real scale, the houses which are 28 feet wide, 40 feet deep, on a 50 by 100 lot. That subdivision was done 7 years ago in North Brunswick, and that's how in the real life it's gonna look like. So you can see that in terms of the scale between the size of the house and lot, it looks pretty decent to me. And I appreciate your comment about the piano. I'm a pianist, and I have a grand piano in my house, and I can assure you, you can get the piano in that house.
All right.
Even Steinway, any of those. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't have any more
That
testimony.
would conclude our presentation.
And we'll just open to the public, and then I can come back to you, and you can make any summation you want. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we open the meeting to the public for a hearing on this application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is open to the public on this particular matter. That's, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead and just, or Marco, you go, no, that's all right. Just let me, yeah. You can see we have-
I'm Bob Rake. I live at 132 Douglas Avenue in Somerset, New Jersey, Franklin Township.
Want to raise your right hand, sir?
Oh.
Do you solemnly swear, affirm, tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes. Do I have to repeat everything else? No? Okay, cool. I was actually opposed to the small site plans for each building, but sitting here, I'm really not, and looking at the plans, I've never seen the plans before. I think it's a really good idea. I don't think a duplex house on that property would be good for the neighborhood because it could be rented out. And for a block and a half up from Hamilton down past Ziggy Snyder's home, there's no rental property. It begins after that, and kind of like to keep it that way. I looked at the plans. I have no problem with the setbacks and the variances they're asking for. The only thing that, that the board has to realize, and the builders too, that there's a drainage problem in that area. And, when it rains for half a day, there's rivers around the corner of my house. I live in the corner of Catherine and Douglas. I know the area pretty well. I've been there 27 years. I don't have any link to the builder at all, but when that was subdivided by the Meserole family, it was, I was here at that meeting, and part of the subdivision was, if you go back and look, there should have been a single-family home put up on that. There was never anything brought up about a duplex, and no parking lot. But I think they did a great job on planning that out on that property, and I seen the pictures on the computer, look pretty good, and I don't see anybody else trying to buy that piece of property. I think the same person owned it for a few years. But I think it'd be good for the neighborhood, and back in 1959, that was called Douglas Gardens, and the house I live in was on the corner of Hamilton and Douglas as a show home. And before that was farmland. And all these properties that are marked in yellow or 50-foot, one gentleman said, that's the way they were sold back in the day. It was all farmland. Everybody bought a piece and did what they needed to do. But as far as I'm concerned, I think, should let it go and let them build. But that's up to you guys. Thanks.
Just two quick clarifications. Just in terms of stormwater, that's one of the things that they're going to have to work out with our
Yes.
engineers. So
Oh.
our engineers reviewed it, they had a bunch of comments, they're going to have to figure that out and work it out with our engineers. And then with regard to the subdivision, and they came to the board twice. The first time they came, they were proposing for that area a lot that was less than 10,000 square feet, and at that point, the board imposed a condition that it had to be a single-family house. They came back after that, amended the subdivision, and made that a 10,000 square foot lot, which made that restriction go away.
Okay.
So that's why we've been saying that 10,000 square foot lot by zoning, they could have a duplex.
Okay. All right, because, that's where my lot is. But, if you look over in Henry Street, there's, I forget the name of the street that goes, I think it's called Rose Street. And where Henry comes in, they put up a two-story, single-family home. I mean, they had to get variances for that place because there's no yard. There's nothing there, just a building, with a white fence around it. So if you look in the room, look at, I don't know the name of the builder, but put that up and there's no yard. And that was my main concern here, but in the plan, there's 33 feet from the back of the house to the back of the next property line, or backyard. It's not a bad backyard. But, like I said, I go back to this before, it was, when it was first subdivided, it was for a single-family home. And I think this is pretty good, and I think the guys did a lot of thought, and it looks pretty good. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, seeing no one else coming forward, I would move that this public hearing be closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, Any more board comments regarding this? Ted, go ahead.
I just had a question. You show in the backyards an 18-inch oak and a 19-inch oak to be removed. Why are you removing them? They're not in the way of the houses.
The reason why we're thinking to remove it, because when we dig the hole, we might and most likely can cut the roots, which meaning that in the future we can expect that trees go dead. And I don't want later on to be someone hurt but dead tree. So I love the trees. I'd love to save as many as I can. And also, and according to our plan, we're planning to put some more trees, but those trees, as a to builder, I guess has to go.
Well, they're not really that close, particularly the one on lot 34.03. I mean, it's sort of like destroying the village in order to save it.
Is it possible to save those trees?
We can try and look into it definitely. We definitely will do so.
Yeah, can you?
You have one problem. You got a yard drain in there, and you have to regrade that yard. Gentleman was talking about flooding. Well, you're taking care of that.
Correct.
They're picking up the water in the yard and bringing it out into the street and putting it in the storm system. They've got to grade the property to do that. Now, I don't know if the grading will save the tree or not. I don't know how much you have to, I don't
Right.
have the existing grades aren't here, but I can see that you're going to have to grade a very large area to get that thing to work. So that may kill the tree before you even get started.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you can
Right.
save it, save it.
Right. We're going to look into it.
If you
Definitely.
can get the advice of
Definitely
an
we'll look at
arborist
it.
on
Right,
it.
absolutely.
Just- I think it would make the properties more valuable. you
Of
know,
course.
An 18-inch tree versus a 2-inch tree.
But street trees will also be required, correct, on this? For
Yeah, they have them.
Yes.
100 feet of frontage or
They've got a couple of street trees already. AR, what's that?
Acer rubrum, the red maple.
Yeah. Okay. Any other board comments? No?
Save the trees.
I just want to apologize to the board. I stand corrected. I was looking at the envelope and panicked.
Not a problem.
The corrected lot size feels a lot more comfortable as someone on a lot that size.
Well, actually, you bring up a good point, and one of the things that the board might want to consider is you're being presented a particular plan for particular variances, so, and it's a common condition of this board to basically say, it's going to be those homes that you're presenting, and it's going to be on the lot as presented to us with those setbacks. So, and I think that would be an appropriate condition because they're proposing lots that are more narrow than is required. So I think it's appropriate to say, okay, you're showing us homes that are set back 11 feet, and the two homes in particular are 22 feet apart, and we want to have that type of separation. We don't want homes that are bigger than that, and we want homes that look like that. So those are conditions that you've imposed, so I'd recommend you consider those.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Do you have any?
No further witnesses. My only comment would be I would ask for approval, otherwise we submit.
Okay. And the variances you advance under C2?
Yes.
Okay, if there's no other board discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept as applied. 4.
But if you're, in your motion, you're including the conditions that Mark mentioned?
Yes.
Okay.
We would comply with that anyway. We don't have a problem.
So do we have a second?
Second. Mr. LaCourte?
Yes.
Mr. Mettler?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
No.
Mr. Pettit?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Botasnak, sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you very much.
We're going to hear our last application of the night, PLN 14-00001, F Greek Development.
Yes, good evening, Stephen Tripp from the law firm of Wilens, Coleman and Smith.
Yeah, Steve, you got to use it like a rock star.
Okay.
It doesn't pick up so good, sorry.
Okay. Stephen Tripp from the firm of Wilentz, Goldman, and Spitzer on behalf of the applicant. This application, it's a property that's got frontage on Roosevelt and Veronica Avenue in the M2 zone. It's vacant land, 38.31 acres. Has significant environmental constraints towards the east side of the property, wetlands, flood hazard areas, transition areas. There were prior approvals back in 2003, minor subdivision and preliminary and final site plan, and then an amended site plan in 2008. Contemplated 3 lots with a building on each and about 216,000 square feet of total floor area. The subdivision was perfected, the map was filed, site plan was approved for one of the 3 buildings. The 2 others were shown on the schematic plans that were part of the set. All of the permits were obtained, but construction has not taken place. The applicant this evening is the contract purchaser. We're proposing to acquire and develop the property, and the contract purchaser is looking to modify the approvals. 2 lots, 2 buildings with a total floor area of 208,750 square feet, a little less than was previously on the plans. Basically, we're seeking amended site plan, minor subdivision, and there is a variance regarding pipeline setback. There's a Sunoco petroleum line that's on the edge of the property. 100 feet is required in your ordinance. We're at 76 feet. Before the application was even filed, the applicant met with the fire official and discussed the circumstances, and we have a report. The engineer will address it. They have no issues based on the type of construction that we're providing. So we'll get into that. And basically, what our intent here is with the existing approvals, and I've discussed this with the board attorney, is until all of the additional approvals we need are obtained and the approvals are perfected, the existing approvals would remain. Once we file the subdivision plat, the new subdivision plat, then the old approvals would expire and the new approvals would take their place. So that's our intent in coming before the board for amended approvals.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. I did review this with Mr. Tripp.
Okay. Speaking of reports, the board got 2 reports by mail. They were the engineer report and the public works report. Hopefully everyone does have those, but if they don't, maybe we can do something between now and the time, so, to get you copies of those.
No, I have all the reports.
All right, but I'm saying we got them emailed, so, as PDF, so if we didn't print them out.
Yeah, I
I'm
have.
looking at mine on my phone, which is fine.
Okay.
But just in case people don't have them, we can make copies.
You want to make prints of these? You want to make copies of these? I've downloaded them. I mean, you want, the board all have them?
Does anyone on the board need a copy of the engineering report?
And the public works report.
Okay.
Here's the-
Just looks like one from Mr. Mettler.
Mr. Tripp, you want to have this marked as A1, the handout?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, so while that's going on, just go ahead and continue on.
Okay, certainly
First
will.
witness.
Just give me 1 second. Exhibit A1 is the 2-sheet handout. 3 sheets? Okay. And why don't we mark the 2 exhibit boards as well?
3 sheets.
Oh, you have 3? Okay. I see 2 boards.
So we're going to call A2 the JMJ1 aerial map, prepared by Redcom Design and Construction with a date of 3/5/2014. Next one we'll call A3. It's entitled JMJ1 preliminary and final full development schematic plan with a date of 8/4/2003, last revised 8/17/2007. And it shows the previously approved site plan. And the last exhibit I'm going to use is going to be A4. It's entitled JMJ1 Site Plan Rendering with a date of 3/5/2014, and it's a color rendering of the proposed site plan, amended site plan.
Okay. I'd like to introduce our engineer, John Manilio. We'll have him sworn in, and
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Are you a licensed engineer of the state of New Jersey?
Yep, licensed in the state of New Jersey.
and can you describe just briefly your firm affiliation and your involvement in this project?
All right, so I'm Vice President of Engineering for Redcom Design and Construction. We represented the previous applicant as Redco Engineering Construction, same company, different name. And I was in charge of the preparation of these site plans.
Can you briefly describe the property, just to give the board an orientation?
Okay, I'm going to refer to Exhibit A2, the aerial map. So the existing property is known as 22 to 24 Roosevelt Avenue, Block 88.02, lots 3609, 36.10, and 36.11. Lots 36.09 and 36.10 have frontage on Roosevelt Avenue, and lot 36.11 has frontage on Veronica Avenue. As you can see, the lots are vacant and predominantly wooded, surrounded by industrial and commercial properties to all areas except for the south with some residential properties. And the property is located in the M2 light manufacturing zone. Additionally, it's not shown on this map, but 53% of the lot is constrained by either environmental constraints, wetlands, wetland buffers, stream encroachment, Delaware Route Canal Commission buffers, easements.
And that's all towards the easterly portion of the site?
Majority is to the east portion of the property. There's also a 75-foot residential buffer along the south and a gas Sunoco pipeline easement along the western property line.
And there's an existing LOI that's
Yes.
currently valid?
So we have a couple of approvals from DEP already with the old application, an LOI, a transition area waiver, both approved in 2006, and a flood hazard applicability determination in 2008. And we had an approval for general permits number 2 and 10A granted in 2006 as well. That is the only approval that's not extended with the Permanent Extension Act, and we are currently into DEP for that reapproval.
That's the GP?
The
But the
GPs.
other DEP approvals are still...
Still valid, yeah.
And the prior approval, as I indicated, was 3 lots, which are shown on your schematic plan?
Yes, I'm going to refer to A3 now. This is I colored it in just so it looks, so you can see what's going on here. This was previously approved. 3 lots, 3609, 3610, 3611. All 3 of them with separate buildings. Lot 3609 was approximately 3.9 acres with a building of 42,400 square feet. Lot 36.10 was approximately 8.14 acres with a building of 97,520 square feet. And the remaining portion of the property was known as 36.11 and with 26.22 acres and a building size of 75,750 square feet. Also part of the application is we proposed 2 stormwater detention basins, and those basins took care of reduction for the full development. And then on lot 36.10, there was a small infiltration basin which took care of groundwater recharge and water quality just for the building and improvements on 36.1. Additionally, as Mr. Tripp had explained, we did submit the full schematic plan as part of the last application, but we were only approved for Phase 1, which was the improvements on 36.10 plus the stormwater improvements on 3611.
And can you give the board a brief overview of the amended plans, what we're now seeking to do?
So I'm going to point to Exhibit A4, the site plan rendering. So for the most part, everything to the east of the lot, the basins, the wetlands, the conservation easements are to remain, for the most part, exactly the same as the old application, with minor modifications to the basins, which I'll get into later. As far as the lots, we're going from 3 lots to 2 lots now. The lot on the top is about 1/3 of the lot, and the one on the bottom is about 2/3. And those areas are, for Lot A is 14.68 acres, and for Lot B is 23.63 acres. Additionally, there's 2 buildings instead of 3 buildings this time. Lot A has a building that's 86,400 square feet, and the building on Lot B is 122,350 square feet. So there's a slight decrease in the total floor area for the buildings from what was previously approved. This application proposed 208,750 square feet of building area, where the old application was for 670 square feet. These buildings are very similar to the other buildings as far as what their use are. It's a flex building. There's no tenants secured at this point, but they could be used for warehouse space, light industrial, or any other use that's permitted in the zone.
And the detention basins are all going to be located on Lot B, correct?
Yep, all the detention basins are on Lot B, and like I said, there's minor modifications to the basins. To these basins, we changed the outlet structure, so it controlled the flow of water, and then the infiltration basin was increased to provide groundwater recharge and water quality for the whole lot now, not just for the old 36.10. Access around the lots and parking is very similar to the old application. The old application had 3 driveways off of the Roosevelt Avenue cul-de-sac. This application has 3 as well. The old application had 1 off of Veronica Ave. This one has 1 as well. Additionally, there are separate areas for passenger vehicles for parking in the front of the buildings, and separate areas for truck loading areas behind both buildings.
And these lots are intended, they're separate lots, but they'll be cross easements, so they're intended to function together.
Yes, there'll be cross.
With parking, access, so that either lot can use the driveways and the parking areas, correct?
Yep, there'll be cross-access easements
Will
for
that apply to
parking.
drainage and maintenance of the drainage system too? Will there be cross easements for that?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Basins, somehow cross easements.
Right,
Correct. There's going to be a cross easement document that we'll have to prepare, get approved, and record prior to filing, or simultaneously with filing the plat that will cover all of the cross easements.
All right, so as far as parking, so since there's no tenants and there's no really layout of what the use is going to be in the buildings, we took an arbitrary number of what the average is usually for these type of buildings. So we used 10% of office for both buildings, and the remainder we spec'd out as warehouse space.
And 10% was conservative.
It was a little conservative, but it could fluctuate up or down. So we took the 10%. We think that's very conservative for this use. So using that number, we're required to have 175 parking spaces, 7 of which are handicap. We're proposing 214 spaces, 10 of which are handicap.
And can you explain why we're seeking the 214 spaces? There was a comment in the planner's report just talking about the need for additional parking, why we feel it's necessary.
Right.
I'd like to address that.
Right. So since these spaces are not rented out yet, we don't know what the office space is going to be. We don't know how many tenants are there going to be. So the more tenants you have, actually the more parking you need for separate tenants. Additionally, it could be a different use, not or warehousing. It could be manufacturing, or could have more office space. So we just want to have the flexibility to lease it to more possible tenants.
And the long building is particularly likely to have multiple tenants, is that
Right.
correct?
It's not suited for one tenant, as there's 3 drops in the building, or steps in the building.
Just a quick question. Can you just speak, I know you don't have tenants, but can you speak just generally to the types of tenants in terms of light manufacturing, warehouses, distribution type uses, anything outside of?
Yeah, I would like a representative of the applicant to address that. I think he can better explain that. Matt Schlinwein, I'll have him sworn in.
Want to raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Your name and address?
Matthew Schlimwine, 33 Cotters Lane, East Brunswick, New Jersey.
Before you answer, just indicate briefly what your position is with the applicant, F Creek Development.
Sure, I'm the Vice President of Development for the company.
Okay, and you're familiar with the leasing and
Yes.
and the development of the properties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, you pretty much hit it on the head when you mentioned all the different tenants, light manufacturing, flex use. The way that we've structured the property is the long skinny building is going to be geared more towards those smaller warehousing and, call it flex users that, will utilize the space more for small businesses, and then the larger building, the audience that we're targeting there is somebody who's going to use it for more high storage and, general warehousing use, probably be lesser of a percentage office on that building than the 10% that John conceived, and then some of the units, although a lot of them will be probably about the 10% office, some of the units in the longer building may be slightly more.
And from your experience, you need the parking that you've proposed in order to be able to attract tenants. Is that correct?
Yes. And we're looking for a long-term outlook. Even if the first tenant in the building doesn't necessarily need that parking, we're planning it for a long-term hold so that, the next tenancies that come in may need it in the future.
So that brings me to a question, is that why couldn't you bank that? I mean, do you have to construct it? If we gave you the approval for it, if you need it in the future, but not actually, delve into that impervious coverage now without having a firmer grasp of who you're renting to.
No, we understand that. I guess the problem with that would be that usually for marketing the spaces, a lot of the tenants, they want to see the parking that's there now. So we'd like to install it now. And then also when we look at the overall coverages, and I think John's going to speak to this a little bit more, we're well under the impervious coverage that we currently propose. So I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, what's the proposed impervious versus what's permitted?
So the ordinance allows 65% for the zone. We're at roughly 28%.
I'm not surprised, given the fact that, 60% of it's unbuildable, but, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, they could use the extra parking to pile snow up next year.
No, I mean, I understand. It's just, I suppose that if there could be any reduction of parking, especially in the building that you do expect to have perhaps less of a need for it, the one that's going to be more warehouse than the other one, I would encourage that it be banked. But, I mean, the compromise could be, you could bank some more on the warehouse building and build some more on the top building where you think there may be...
Actually, there was less parking in the immediate vicinity of the warehouse building with that in mind. The greater number of parking spaces are by the flex building. And and that would be where, if there was going to be banking, that's where it would be. And that's the building that we really feel we need the extra parking. So, I mean, it was designed based on their experience. I mean, typically, at least it's been my experience, developers don't want to build improvements they don't think they need. So they really feel that this is important. In terms of stormwater management, I think you touched on that before. The plans now address the stormwater reduction and water quality and infiltration for the entire site.
That is correct. Yep. As far as conservation easement, the size and shape is going to be exactly the same from the old application. Only difference is the difference of how much is on each lot. Additionally, there is going to be a modification to the easement along the west for the gas pipeline. Currently, it's 100 feet. We're proposing 50 feet, which we're working with Sunoco on that, and I think we have a pretty good indication that they're okay with it as well.
And in terms of landscaping plan?
So landscaping proposed is generally consistent with the previous approval. We're going to work and get the southern buffer a little beefier to be exactly like the old approval. I believe that was one of the comments from one of the review letters. So we'll comply with that. As far as tree removal, we'll work with the town planner on that as well. I believe in the old amended, or on the current amended site plan, some relief was granted on that as far as what's required for tree removal, since the original application was approved prior to the tree replacement requirements. Lighting is in accordance with the township ordinance, consisting of building-mounted and pole-mounted lights, with no light trespass on any of the adjoining properties.
And in terms of the zoning requirements, this plan meets all the requirements with the exception of Section 11225, which is the pipeline setback requirement?
That is correct. So
And you alluded to the existing Sun Oil, that's a petroleum line?
it's petroleum line.
And can you point out where that's located?
So I'm going to turn to this side. So along the western property line, I'll put my finger and I'll trace a path is where the gas line is. It starts inside the property, and by the time it gets to this side, it's outside the property and goes off the property.
And the ordinance requires a 100-foot setback. We are, how many feet from
Ordinance
the building?
Requires a 100-foot setback. At the closest spot, we're at 76.6 feet away. And then this is due to part that there's a lot of environmental constraints to the east of the property. Like I said,
Well, let's get into that now. Because of the environmental constraints, that dictates the building location, is that correct?
right, so it creates a hardship where all the development needs to be done to the west portion of the lot. And it really does limit the amount of area that can be developable.
And your goal here was to try to efficiently use what was developable, correct?
That is correct.
And you couldn't move the building in an easterly direction away. You would have to reduce the size of the building, is that correct?
That is correct. So the building could not be shifted to the east where it would encroach in some of the wetlands or buffers. The only option would be to cut off approximately 7,000 square feet of the building.
Which gets me to FAR, which is, what is the FAR permitted by the ordinance?
So permitted by the ordinance is .5.
And what is the FAR for Lot B?
.119.
And for Lot A?
.135.
And combined for both lots?
So combined FAR for both lots is .125.
So that would,
Let me just interrupt real
Yes.
quick. This board may not know what FAR means.
floor area ratio.
What that means is that's the amount of building mass they can have on each of the lots, and they're basically saying that you're well below the building, the amount of building mass that you're allowed to have on each of the lots.
Correct. We're approximately, John, approximately 25% of what's allowed, is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, that is correct. So
Can I just ask
Yes.
a quick question about the pipeline issue? So I totally understand where you're coming from on that. Who has the, decision on that? Is that just a township ordinance that you need to be 100 feet away, or do the people that own the gas line want you?
Well, we're going to get into that in a second, but you have your ordinance requirements, and Sunoco has their requirements as well.
What are Sunoco's?
Sunoco's requirements is 25 feet.
Okay, you've answered my question.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me. In fact, the Department of New Jersey requires that a gas line company constructing a gas main
Yeah.
not put it within 100 feet of an
Yeah.
occupiable building.
This isn't a gas main, this is a petroleum line.
Petroleum line, gas main,
Mm-hmm.
utility line of that type, because it could be gas today and tomorrow something else. But the problem is Franklin adopted that in reverse, if you will. And we set it up in our town that you must be 100 feet away from the gas main, or gas line, or petroleum line, whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't differentiate.
Correct.
So if you took 25 feet off the front of the building, you don't have to deal with the gas main.
Well, we could, but let me
Well, no, I know.
continue. Yeah, let me continue with the testimony, and we'll explain to you what we're thinking. If we get the variance, we're going to be a little bit closer to the FAR that the ordinance would contemplate, correct?
yeah, so we'll be closer to the FAR that's intended as well as what the master plan intended for this zone.
And in terms of any detriments, first of all, before we submitted this application, did you sit down with staff and go over the building and the distance from the pipeline?
Yeah, so we had a pre-application meeting with the township planner, zoning officer, engineer, fire official, Mr. House, and we discussed this issue. And one of the items that we had suggested was, in lieu of the 100 feet, is that we'll place a 3-hour firewall along the western side of building on Lot B. Additionally, it's not a frame construction building. It's a concrete tilt-up building. So what that is a solid 9.5-inch concrete wall that's poured on the ground, and then they're tilted up. So your wall is all non-combustible material.
And based on that, do you believe that the purposes of the ordinance for fire safety have been met?
Right, so there's no, yeah, fire safety is met.
And again, Sunoco's requirement is 25 feet, is that correct?
Yeah, Sunoco in their rules and regulations requires 25 feet minimum to a building or structure.
And will this result in any adverse impacts or detriments that you're aware of from an engineering standpoint?
No.
Or
there's-
safety standpoint?
As far as a visual or safety impact, no.
I don't have any further questions on the, as to the plan. We'll go through the reports if you
Yeah,
like.
so let's just nail down the tree issue. I understand that the ordinance changed in the intervening years, and that I don't know what relief was granted in the past, but I'd like to nail down some specifics, not sort of a nebulous, we'll, add to this.
Well,
add to that.
my
So-
understanding was the prior approval, the first approval in '03 was granted before the tree ordinance was in effect. When the amended approval came, I think the understanding, John, was that they would address the tree ordinance requirements for any additional removal beyond what was previously contemplated in the
Right.
first approval.
So that included majority of the improvements on lot 36.1.
Mhm.
So these improvements did not change with the amended site plan approvals, and the basins changed slightly with the amended site plan approvals. So the net increase in disturbance was agreed upon to do tree removal, so that includes this upper portion. So as far as if you're looking at, the amended site plan, we're asking for a partial exemption on this building, which was previously approved for the most part at the same, but we would provide tree removal replacement for the upper portion, Lot A.
Okay, so based on the current ordinance, you'll work that out for Lot A?
Well, I don't, I'm not saying that I disagree with you, I just don't recall that. I could run back to my office and look. Is that reflected in the resolution?
It's in the resolution.
Yeah, it's, Mark, it's in the resolution. We looked at it before, and that, his summary is accurate based on the resolution.
Okay, and then, so in essence, the first building down below, Vince, that was essentially exempted, except to the degree that if the modifications had more?
Right, because that building was approved basically prior to the ordinance being in effect, so the board didn't feel it was fair that they have to apply to that, so.
And then the northern building, that would just have to comply?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, let's be careful with the word exempted. It's not like there wasn't a tree ordinance when this first came before us, it just got more stringent. So, whatever the ordinance was in at that time, I'm sure they had to replace
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
Now,
I used the wrong word, I apologize for
Right.
that.
Well, I just wanted to clarify. So for the top portion, that will be under the current 222 removal.
Basically, what they're asking is to continue the same condition that was in the prior resolution.
No, I totally understand. So only the top building that will apply under the new,
And the bottom one will apply to the degree that...
whatever that was...
Whatever applied at the time in 2003, and then if there's any additional disturbance, the new ordinance would kick in.
Right, yeah, so those are the details we just want to work out with your professionals.
Right. So, within that
Parameters.
guideline, please do work it out. So you know how that, just to be completely
Certainly.
transparent, you do know if you can't, whatever the case may be, right? If you can't replace trees on site, there's a matrix for the contribution to the shade tree fund.
Right, and we'll have to provide you with those tree samplings too for the lot.
Okay.
Yeah, we are aware of that. We can be pretty brief through the engineer's report. There's really just a handful of items. I mean, we basically agree with this is the February 28th, 2014 memorandum.
We don't, all I need to hear about is anything you want to discuss that you don't agree with.
The one thing that comment one, and that's not indicative that I'm going to go through every single one, so don't worry. We're going to go through it very quickly. Just talks about whether or not there's a need for a major subdivision. I think that was discussed with the...
It's a minor subdivision.
With Mr. Dominic.
Yeah, it's a minor subdivision.
It's a minor subdivision. It's not a major. So that's...
I'm just, for curiosity's sake, what is that based on?
It's based on the fact that the The engineer was talking about when the plat was recorded, but the approval was more than 10 years ago. The original
What does the law require?
subdivision, your ordinance says the law allows your ordinance to define what's a minor and a major, and your ordinance defines a minor as, it can't be a minor if you subdivided it within the last 10 years.
Yeah, I know that, but when,
And
what's the effective date of the subdivision?
The effective date was, it was approved in December of 2003, and the resolution was memorialized in January of 2004.
And that's the date that we use as the approval.
Because that's the date from when all the periods run. So that's comment one. We really have we'll agree to all the comments until we get to, the only ones that the engineer wants to sit down and work out with your engineer are items 22, 23.
So those deal with pipe slopes and pipe material.
33.
And 34, both are in respect to township standards for sidewalks and pavement. We'll be willing to provide supporting calculations.
45.
45 is regarding access to the outlet structures, which we'll discuss with the engineer as well. We do have some items in place already, some gravel driveways.
52.
52 is a technical issue that we'll discuss with the engineer regarding stormwater.
And 60.
And 60 is the same as the technical issue regarding stormwater.
All right, well, since none of us is qualified to comment on any of those issues, all I would say is that it'll be a condition of any approval that you'll work those out with you.
Okay.
Correct. And in terms of the planner's report, I believe the plan, the review comments, comment one just talked about what the applicant should demonstrate for a variance, and I'm prepared to address that based on the testimony of the engineer, which is essentially, our position is that A, you have a hardship situation because of the environmental constraints that forces the FAR to be way below what the ordinance and the master plan contemplate for the property. And in addition to the C1 hardship, you have the C2 flexible C, which is a better planning alternative, and the idea is that it's a safe construction. We met with the fire official. They had no adverse comments in their reports. The purpose of the ordinance, the purpose behind the ordinance is, unlike other setbacks from things you can see, it's not a visual issue, it's a safety issue, and we've met the safety issue. So the only thing you would accomplish by strictly enforcing the ordinance is to eliminate floor area when you're already at a very low level, and the purposes of the municipal land use law for the appropriate development of land and the efficient use of land, sufficient space in appropriate locations for proper development, those purposes are advanced, and we don't see any detriments whatsoever because this deviation wouldn't be visible, and the construction techniques that are being used address any possible safety issue. We're also well beyond the requirements imposed by Sunoco itself, which owns the pipeline. So we feel for those reasons we've met the statutory criteria for variance. In terms of parking comments, we addressed the parking, the comments we believe that we would do want to install the number of spaces that we're proposing. There are some comments in your planner's report that talk about removing spaces. Those coincide with some comments in the engineer's report about reconfiguring some of the access points. So that will be worked out in terms of the specific spaces that are identified as being removed. I think the idea would be to reconfigure and try to relocate those spaces and address the engineer's comments regarding the geometry, correct?
That is correct.
The other plan comments, the Tree removal, which is 3A, comment 3A, we addressed that. We just discussed that, what the condition would be on that. B, we will agree to provide a buffer consistent with what was shown previously and approved previously. And C is just the comment that there is the matrix, it refers to the requirements which we have acknowledged. The remaining comments in the planner's report are all acceptable. We have, no disagreement with anything else in the report. Additionally, I have John House, the fire prevention report. They want additional hydrants and to contact fire prevention to discuss locations, and we have no problem with that, obviously. And I don't think there's anything else in any of the other reports that we have an issue with. I think there was that the Public Works report? We have no problem with either. We'll work out those details. That's the March 4th memorandum. And really, that's it. I mean, we have we'll comply except where noted.
Okay,
One question, Mr. Chairman.
go ahead.
To the degree that the building being closer to the pipeline and is permitted, it does move the improvements and the grading closer. Is that part of what you were discussing with Sunoco? Is that part of the process of discussing the width of the easement?
Well, actually, there's a 100-foot easement currently, which is more than they need. It was not plotted on any plan. It was just a reference to it. So we're working with them to actually delineate the easement area more definitively.
Okay.
Right.
So they're not looking at just the building, they're also looking at where the driveway's going to go and the site disturbance
Correct.
associated with that area.
Correct. Your ordinance talks about the building
Yeah.
as opposed to the improvements. You don't have a requirement for improvements. It talks about, I think, structure for habitation, human habitation,
Yeah.
I believe is how it reads. But yes, we're working with Sunoco, and we'll have to coordinate that with Sunoco, all the work within that area.
Right, you're just talking about why the easement's being reduced.
Yeah, and I was just bringing up the point that the fact that the building's going to be closer, obviously that driveway then, if you were to pull the building back, the driveway could pull away as well as the grading. So I just want to make sure that we're not just looking at the building, we want to make sure that Sunoco is going to be okay with the work in that area. So if the board is inclined to approve it, some demonstration of that from Sunoco should be a condition of the approval.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
No, that's not a problem at all. Yep, we have to work with Sunoco, and we have no problem. We have to get their approval, so there shouldn't be a problem.
Any other board questions? Bob?
Yeah, just a couple of, one question and a couple of comments. One is, the question is, I assume that the access to Veronica Avenue is both ingress and egress?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. As regards the pipeline, looking at the aerial view, it would seem that the problems pointed out here would affect even more stall technology, which has been there for some years, and also the buildings to the west of this on Roosevelt Avenue, because they seem to be equally close to the easement as far as I can determine. And the other thing is that this may be a distinction that you wish you didn't have, but the eastern part of your property, which is environmentally sensitive, which you recognize as part of one of only two areas of the township which are shown as swamp on the 1873 map in Beers Atlas. So, congratulations.
It's a well-established swamp.
It's a well-established swamp, yes.
The original guy was Meldan. I don't think he looked at the maps, because he bought it. He had this whole site developed with buildings at one point.
Really?
Meldan Construction. He was the original buyer of the site. And he had every lot, it was 4 or 5 more lots, there were more buildings. Then all of a sudden, the wetlands came up and everything got messed up.
This must have been in the early 80s?
Well, maybe even, I've been here.
Before that, yeah.
I've been here for almost 30 years. I worked here, so it was like.
Other board questions?
Started in the 60s. I was out, but maybe late 80s, early 80s is probably right.
Okay, if there's no other board questions, let's open it up to the public.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the meeting be opened to the public for a public hearing on this application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is now open to the public on this application.
Seeing no one coming forward, I would move that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have any summation, or you're good?
I think basically we met the ordinance with the exception of the pipeline. I think we've satisfied the statutory criteria, and we've agreed to the vast majority of the reports and the professionals' comments, and we'll work out the remainder. So I think at this point, we would ask the board to approve the application.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, let me ask one question.
Sure.
When you were in previously, just so this pipeline thing doesn't get really blown out of proportion, I wasn't here when you did the, I don't know which one of the.
I wasn't either.
I know, but I wondered, in the aerials, that first aerial where you showed the 3 buildings,
Yes.
did the pipeline become an issue then? Or were they back far enough from the pipeline not to be an issue?
In the old application, they
The
kept,
lower building, the one that was in the lower left-hand corner? of that?
no, that conformed to 100-foot. But
Didn't
part of,
conform. So you were aware of the 100-foot?
right,
You were aware of it?
yes,
Okay, that's all I wanted to be sure that you knew it. And those buildings conformed?
right.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay.
These buildings could conform.
We'll entertain a motion still.
I would move to approve the application, subject to all the conditions and points brought up in our discussion.
Second.
Vince, go on.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Potosnik,
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka,
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. I want to make sure if they build whatever.
Oh, yeah, no, that's, yeah.
I don't like.
You can take it.
Oh, no.
We have one marked.
Vince, we have anything else?
Nope. We will not be meeting in 2 weeks. We kept that meeting open in case anything was carried, but that meeting will be canceled, so.
Because of snow?
Don't talk to me about any more snow.
So, this was brought up, so, I mean, we should discuss this at some point, is if we do want to change the format of the planning board meetings to a month, with the one, the first Wednesday for sure for hearings, and the second one as needed or for work, and if not, cancel, because we never end up having the work session meeting anymore, and if we need a work session, we generally have plenty of time on our hands.
Well, we could do whatever we want. I think if we're going to do that, we probably want to do that at the end of the year because we've already posted and noticed.
No, that's fine, I just want
For the
the board
3,
to
but,
think
yeah, we
that
could,
that might.
however you want to do it for next year, you could, that's up to whatever the board
I mean,
wants to do.
that might be worthwhile if this is indicative of the workload that we get, now and in the future. And Mark did mention the master plan, which we have to do. But I mean, that's, again, I don't see us running up into a whole
Right.
lot of issues with that, so. Anybody else have anything tonight? If not, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Good night, everyone.